Good morning, everyone. Can you hear? Good morning. Can you hear me okay? I was being instructed about the microphone just a minute ago. So welcome to our 25th anniversary celebration here at NETL. As I think most of you know, I'm Marianne Walk, and I'm the director of the laboratory. And it's my job to get us started this morning. It'll be 25 years on December 10th, next week, when we celebrate our 25th anniversary of the evolution of the research facilities that used to be energy technology centers, part of the Bureau of Mines, et cetera, all into a DOE national laboratory called the National Energy Technology Laboratory. It is an amazing milestone for us, building on our excellence that's built on foundations of dedication and innovation by our staff. We've achieved a lot of remarkable progress, and I think you saw that in the video. Some of the cool things we've done, but there are so many more that we didn't have time to recognize in that particular video, but there are many, many things we've done through reducing emissions that help to eliminate acid rain, advancing technologies for shale gas production, developing that life-saving stainless steel alloys that was in the video for coronary stents, and also lighter and cost-effective armor for the Department of Defense, just a few other examples. We've also provided a lot of disaster response capabilities to the department, things like the Macondo oil well spill and also the Aliso Canyon natural gas storage event that we brought expertise to bear upon to help the nation. So we should all be proud. And we have a number of people here today that I need to introduce and recognize who have joined us for our celebration this morning. So in a moment, we're going to hear from our Assistant Secretary for Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, Brad Crabtree. And we're going to then hear from Dr. Jerry Richmond, who is our Undersecretary for Science and Innovation. But we also have some other special guests here with us today. So I'd like to recognize Bridget Bartle, the DOE Deputy Chief of Staff, who is here with us. And she also has a really cool thing. She does NETL like the YMCA. Maybe I'll get her to try to do that for us. And we were hoping that Christopher Davis, or the Chief of Staff, was going to join, but he wasn't able to. But we're thrilled that Bridget is here, and she'll also be speaking to us. And we have two former Assistant Secretaries for Fossil Energy with us here. I believe we have Steve Winberg, would you like to wave? And Jim Slutz, would you like to wave? Thank you for joining us. That's very exciting. And then it even gets better, sorry guys, because we have three of NETL's former directors here with us, and they're going to be joining me on stage in a little bit to do a little fireside chat about their experiences at our laboratory. So we have our very first lab director, Rita Bajura. We also have Carl Bauer here with us, and my immediate predecessor, Brian Anderson, has joined us as well. So this is going to be an exciting conversation for us to hear how the lab has evolved over the years. And I'd also like to acknowledge that we have a couple of representatives from other national laboratories here with us today. We have Klaus Daniel from Argonne National Laboratory and Sarah Allendorf from Sandia National Laboratories is here as well. So, with all those introductions, and I do want to thank, before we get started, remember to thank the organizing committee for this event, led by Mike Naggs, who was up here a moment ago. To put all these things together takes a lot of effort, and I don't want to leave it to the end and forget to thank our people who put this event together. So let's have a round of applause for them. So now I'd like to hand it over to Brad Crabtree for some remarks.
And I want to just start off by thanking everybody for just a terrific few years, and especially I'm sorry. The problem here, I'm just going to move this up. there was a glitch and I didn't have my prepared remarks printed out, so I've got them on my iPad here. Here we go. I'll do it, hold the mic properly. So let me start off right off the top here by thanking and recognizing Undersecretary Richmond. Jerry, you just have been such a supporter of this lab. Personally, it's been wonderful to work for you. And I've told all of you this before, but it's worth repeating. Undersecretary Richmond has 13 federal labs that report up to her. And the amount of time and effort in her tenure that she has dedicated to NETL is truly extraordinary. And you stepped in with Jen Wilcox and others and with me and supported the whole effort to really bolster this lab. So thank you for that. And I just think we all should give Jerry a round of applause. And Jerry's deputy, Derek Passarelli's here as well. And Derek, you were there with Undersecretary Richmond the whole time. And with all of your own lab experience and wisdom, thank you so much for everything that you've done to support this lab and to support us in our work. So appreciate that very much. And of course, Bridget, because the front office and the secretary were there along for the whole time in support. So thank you, Bridget. And thanks to Christopher in absence. Also, before I jump into this, Marianne, thank you for just really stepping up as our new lab director. It's been wonderful to see you come into this lab and really take the initiative and the leadership you've shown. So I'm just so excited that you're here. And then two former assistant secretaries, I just want to acknowledge both of you. One of the wonderful things about in my job has been occasionally having the assistant secretaries invite me out for lunch and offer me bipartisan off-the-record counsel. And no, I'm serious, and you don't get a lot of that in Washington. And Jim Slutz is an assistant secretary in the second Bush administration, George W. Bush, and is continuing to serve on the staff of the National Petroleum Council, which just produced two really fantastic reports. And so thank you, Jim. And Steve Winberg, served in my role in the Trump administration. And we knew each other before we both served at DOE. We were, kind of mutual allies and colleagues supporting carbon capture and storage and carbon management broadly. And I was excited when he was chosen to serve in that role and really appreciate the counsel and support you've provided to me informally. Thank you for that, Steve. So the other thing is this is a bit of a full circle for me because my first exposure to DOE was here at NETL. Former Secretary Moniz appointed me to serve on the National Coal Council, that federal advisory committee, and here in Morgantown they hosted, it may have been Pittsburgh, I don't actually remember anymore, but hosted the National Coal Council meeting. That was my first exposure to NETL and really to DOE, and so it's great to be back for your 25th anniversary. Over that time, before serving DOE, I realized how indispensable NETL is in the world of geosciences and carbon management, which was my area of focus prior to service at the department. But coming into this job, I've also developed a much greater appreciation for all the other things that NETL does. And that includes, of course, the resource sustainability portfolio, methane mitigation, just amazing work has been done, especially in the past year, but obviously starting much before that. Just groundbreaking work on the R&D side, also the partnership with EPA, that EPA would reach out to NETL in this way, very significant. And then all the other great work that's being done on critical minerals. That is an area of work for this lab and for FECM in the department more broadly that is going to grow and grow, and it's of profound importance, and I'm just so excited. I'll be excited to watch that work prosper in the coming years. And there are many more things. The list is very long. I understand that some of our members of our team coordinated so that we wouldn't highlight the same things. I've actually have some different things to highlight that Marianne and hopefully the Undersecretary will have other things as well. But I'm particularly excited, as you might expect, about the direct air capture facility in Pittsburgh, the testing. I mean, that is just a wonderful opportunity for innovation where NETL is going to play a global role, not just a national role. One of the things I never knew about before this job was the Albany site. I made an early trip there, and I'm glad I did, and I've been back. And so the undersecretary's been there twice as well. That work is of extraordinary importance and will grow over time. And just one example there, the Advanced Alloy Center that's being developed under the IRA funding, the melting facility there, it's going to be just tremendous, and it's going to serve defense, aerospace, and clean energy altogether. And you know, the internal and external research that this lab does is extraordinary, and the contributions to climate from that work is very important. But the other thing that I'm really proud about, I'm proud of all of you, and I can't claim any part in this. I've just watched it and been supportive, is in the Net Zero Lab Initiative and the real effort that you have all undertaken to get this lab to zero emissions. You will be the first lab to reach net zero. I think it's in 2026, if I'm not mistaken. That's an enormous accomplishment. Thank you. And something you should all be proud of. Very quickly, here's some other things. R&D, production of ammonia at near room temperature with a zero carbon footprint. I think that's one that actually I somehow missed on the tours. I look forward to hearing from someone today about what that exactly is. I'm very excited about that. The lab facilities are being used to determine how rare earth elements are chemically bound in natural systems, again with an idea towards environmentally responsible extraction of those critical minerals in a way that's also commercially feasible. We've heard a lot from NETL about the work that's been done here recently and published recently on getting lithium from produced waters. That's a great intersection between our traditional oil and gas industry and the clean energy and industrial economy of the future. There's just been a real transformation that's been going on here for many years in the R&D space. But then the other thing that's happening is the lab as an institution is being transformed. And I already mentioned Undersecretary Richmond, but I really want to recognize, in her absence, unfortunately, my former deputy and the former acting assistant secretary of Office of Fossil Energy Carbon Management, Jen Wilcox. Again, I'm repeating myself for some of you in the room, please. I will tell her that you all gave her a round of applause. There's no one on our team at DOE that's been more dedicated to this lab than Jen Wilcox, and I think she would be excited to see how far things have come, even since she departed a few months back. So I will end there, but just on a personal note, it's been obviously a tremendous honor to be in this job. I think this is the last time, unless something comes up, this will be the last time that I speak before you at NETL as your assistant secretary, either here or in Pittsburgh or in Albany. But it's been an honor to be in this job, and it's been an honor to work with all of you, so thank you for that. Oh. And I'll now turn it over to Undersecretary Richmond.
Well, good morning, everyone. Here again, I couldn't be happier to be here. I'm just so honored to be with you on this milestone because it is so important. Brad talked about his background with NETL. Mine goes back to doing my research in Oregon and getting a grant from NETL for the work that we were doing on carbon dioxide capture at liquid surfaces. That Albany facility near my hometown is a very special place, just as this is a very special place. I was so impressed, even then when I visited NETL, and even now when I visited there. And when I visited here too. That's why I've been back so many times, because I'm just so proud of what you all are doing. So I admire all the work that you've done. And now, in the time at which the push has never been harder to make a difference, you have exceeded expectations in so many ways. NETL comes up in conversations with the Secretary all the time. because of your importance in what you are doing. And I want you to know that, and Bridget will highlight that also. It's nothing short of extraordinary. So a few things to brag about, if I can do some bragging for you. Let's really take a moment to appreciate what you've gotten done, the magnitude of what you've accomplished just this year. In FY24, you all supported 8 different programs across DOE and obligated an incredible $7.2 billion. $7.2 billion. Did you hear the B in that? Not the M or the T, but the B, okay? And issued 624 awards while managing nearly 1,400 awards. Whoa. Whoa, that is incredible. And the fact that you've done this with very little drama, I can say that from our offices. And we have to attribute a lot of this to the leadership of the lab and Brad, but also to all of you. It's just, you've just shattered them, shattered all the expectations. But as you know, as much as everyone else, that what we've made is a milestone, but there's so much more to go because we're not yet at the finish line. We got to push to get to the finish line. It's an all hands on deck effort in order to make this all happen, not just now and in the coming weeks, but also as we move forward progressively in the kind of things that you feel passionate about, that I feel passionate about, and that is basically, if I can say it, to save the planet. We're all in this together, and knowing that you're going to be here pushing forward gives me great pride, and I cherish it. So thank you for letting me play this role with you, and thank you again for such awesome performance in everything that you do. Yeah, thank you. And now over to Bridget. Our expectations are high, Bridget.
Hi, everyone. So for the person with the least amount of preparation, I now have to do a lot of things in my remarks, but I'm going to try to hit them all. So one, thank you all for having me here today. My colleague Christopher Davis, Chief of Staff, couldn't make it. His flight was canceled, but he should have drove just like me. And I made it. But I'm Senior Advisor and Deputy Chief of Staff to Secretary Granholm, but I also have the honor and privilege of working with Undersecretary Richmond and Brad as part of my portfolio to support the department, and Jim and Brian and so many others. Sean, you guys are just so integral in everything we do. And I know that when I think about all the stats that Undersecretary and Assistant Secretary just laid out, when I look at the other offices that require your support, that lean on your people, that lean on your knowledge, it's really exciting to see you all here today and be able to celebrate. Marianne highlighted that I did come up with a cheer as we waited to come up here, but Derek actually told me I had to do a haiku. So I'm gonna try to land that. National Energy Lab Anniversary. Congratulations to you. Think about it. And one, I just want to say on behalf of the Secretary, while she couldn't be here today, she knows how much progress you have made, how sincere you have taken this huge, unprecedented amount of investment that is moving forward all the innovations and technologies that you have created and putting them out in the field, as well as all the blood, sweat, and tears that's going into negotiating the over 1,400 awards that the Undersecretary highlighted. So that work and dedication is not going unappreciated by any means, and there are so many communities that are benefiting from your commitment. So thank you. And Marianne, to honor your call out to the cheer, if everyone wants to do it, I think it'd be more fun. But we're gonna do NETL. You guys ready? It's like the YMCA. Ready? N, E, T, L. Yay! Happy anniversary.
Well, it's a little difficult to follow that. But we're going to move on anyway, and I appreciate all of you who are standing your patience, but we are going to now have our little panel of former laboratory directors. And so they are already coming up here on the stage. They're going to join me. And I have some prepared questions for them that they get to answer. And then if we have time, we are going to allow questions from the audience. So they're getting mic'd up. And I think we have one handheld as well. Okay, great. All right, so let's do this. So as we are celebrating our 25 years of achievement, we're really privileged to hear from our 3 previous distinguished leaders who have guided our laboratory through pivotal moments in our history. And that, of course, is Rita, Carl, and Brian. So Rita was the first director of NETL and also the very first female director of a DOE National Laboratory. And I really want to point that out. It's pretty impressive. I will just digress for a second to note that a few years ago, we had 0 female lab directors out of 17. Now we're up to, I believe, 5. So it's we're continuing to make progress in that. But Rita led the laboratory during a time of consolidation and growth. She fostered groundbreaking collaboration. She advanced environmental sustainability and fossil energy research. So our question for Rita. With NETL's consolidation into a unified laboratory, what challenges did you face? There couldn't have been any challenges in doing that, right?
Nothing.
And how did you ensure that this transition enhanced our research capabilities at the laboratory?
Thank you, Mary Ann, for those questions. 25 years ago, in December 1999, it was my honor and privilege to participate with Secretary of Energy Bill Richardson in the designation of the then Federal Energy Technology Center as a DOE National Laboratory. It was a momentous occasion. But a year of behind-the-scenes preparation went into that event. As you can imagine, there were a lot of issues. The consolidation of the Morgantown and Pittsburgh sites was only 3 years into the making, and there were still issues sorting out that consolidation. But the Department of Energy wanted a new national lab. They recognized that they had the Idaho National Lab doing nuclear, they had NREL in Golden, Colorado doing renewable energy, and they needed a lab to focus on fossil utilization, recognizing that fossil energy was and still is more than 80% of our energy supply. So there were 2 key challenges in establishing a new national lab. The first challenge was, what defines a national laboratory? There wasn't any book out there on what a national lab is. Is it the people in a laboratory? Is it the programs? Is it the facilities? What is a national lab? And then what criteria did NETL need to meet to be declared a national lab? And how would we prove to the rest of the world that we met those criteria? The second challenge would be, what would be the impact of national lab status on our stakeholders? And this was critical. Our stakeholders wanted to know, how would the status quo change? Would it make it better? Would it make the research opportunities better? And my staff had to work over the year to address these 2 challenges. We needed to address these challenges to get buy-in from a whole list of stakeholders on the creation of a national lab. And we had a lot of stakeholders. The NETL government employees were key stakeholders. They were our treasurers, but their concern is, what about my job? Does national lab status mean we must become a GOCO, a government-owned contractor-operated lab? And that was a key issue for employees. The answer was, we will continue to operate a high-quality lab with government employees, but expect more collaboration with other research organizations and also expect an increased emphasis on our on-site research program. Another key stakeholder, industrial groups holding contracts with the NETL. And their concern was, will all the money or most of the money be directed to on-site research? And the answer was external contracted research will continue, but expect more industry-wide collaborations and more earlier stage research. Congressional delegations housing NETL site were also interested in what national lab status would be. Their concern is what happens to the number of jobs in my state or my congressional district. And the answer was national lab status provides more opportunities for excellence and thus more job opportunities. Look at the existing national labs for examples of job creation. DOE headquarters was also engaged in creating a framework for a new national lab. This effort was led by Dr. Ernie Moniz, who was then Undersecretary of Energy. In 2013, he became Secretary of Energy. Headquarters stakeholders included, quote, the lawyers. Their concern was, who has the authority to designate a new national lab? Is it DOE headquarters? Is it Congress? Just as an interesting side note, there was a controversy during this year. How many national labs does DOE already have? And the answer was nobody knew. Depending on who was counting, there were between 14 and 16 national labs. But it was interesting, there was no manual on how to create a national lab and what is a national lab. The Office of Fossil Energy was also heavily engaged. The national lab structure was relatively new to them. And the key questions were how would the fossil energy program be managed and implemented under this new structure? And for the non-fossil energy work that was underway, what will be the chain of responsibility for implementing that program in a laboratory that reports to the Office of Fossil Energy? Fortunately, during that year, all or at least most of the stakeholder concerns were resolved, and in December 1999, we became a national lab. In doing so, we changed a few of the ways we operated. First, we looked for more opportunities to establish industry-wide collaborations involving more fundamental research. For example, we established the regional carbon sequestration partnerships. The goal was to examine the technology, infrastructure, and regulations we needed to implement carbon capture storage in various regions of the country and in Canada. I believe this decade-long program was very successful. It established the U.S. leader in carbon capture and deployment of storage technologies. The second change in how we operated, we established more collaborative programs with other national labs. For example, we partnered with PNNL to establish the Solid State Energy Conversion Alliance, or SECA. The goal of this alliance was to significantly reduce the manufacturing cost and the material cost of solid-state fuel cells. This was a decade-long program. Ultimately, 5 national labs, several universities, 3 major manufacturers were involved in it. And on this afternoon's tour, I'm anxious to see how the results of the SECA program are playing out in NETL's high-temperature fuel cell and electrolyzer development. The third challenge in how we operated, we strengthened partnerships with regional universities. Our goal was to strengthen the on-site research program by increasing opportunities for faculty and graduate students to work at the NETL site or with NETL researchers. And to this end, we established a partnership with University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon, and West Virginia University. Just in closing, let us celebrate this momentous occasion with pride, gratitude for the past 25 years, and Here's to another 25 years of excellence, innovation, and progress at the National Energy Technology.
Thank you, Rita, for those inspiring remarks and reminders of all the work that it takes to develop, to create a national laboratory.
And to continue.
So let's move on to Carl now. During your tenure, Carl, you expanded our focus on cleaner energy technologies and tech transfer, ensuring that innovations like the Combustion Control and Diagnostics Center and hydrogen turbine systems reached the private sector and delivered real-world impact. So what were the key strategies that you used to bridge the gap between our research and its adoption by industry? And how did you address challenges in making sure that these technologies could be commercialized effectively? And any other remarks you want to make are okay too.
Well, am I on?
Yes.
Well, as Rita laid out, I just had to build on the groundwork that she'd done, the foundational requirements. And I was here during that time, so I was part of the team working with Rita, for Rita, and doing that. Where we were then, we had opportunities and we had challenges. Because as you alluded to, Rita, there was still a north-south friction going on between the various entities. And, there used to be arch rivals, Pittsburgh and Morgantown sites. And it was easy reliance of scientific minds who disagreed. But going to the main question that you said, building on what had happened, we further strengthened the relationship with the universities. In fact, I talked to the director of NREL at the time, and he actually copied the use of the surrounding research facilities at the academic institutions there, because part of what the answer was, not for us to build more research facilities, but to use their research facilities and their people with our people to extremely and quickly raise the capability of our work to be done. But it became our work and their work, and they wound up with some patents and licenses, and we did, which leads over to the conversation you kind of pointed me towards. So one of the nice things about being the NETL is we have, as the Undersecretary, talked to the amount of work going on in private industry. Well, that gives us great insight to what industry's doing and thinking. So we have the government, which sets policy and regulations, and the industry has to meet those, usually through engineering and science, if it's in the area of emissions control and reductions and benefit to the energy world. And the energy world is privately owned, basically. So if we were a DOD, Department of Defense research entity, we'd have one customer base. Well, you might say Air Force, Army, Navy, but basically you have a captive customer. We don't have that captive customer. We have a customer that has their own idea, and it has an economics and commercial reliability that has to be addressed as well. So trying to understand that, as well as producing the research that could become a commercial product, a technology, or contribute to a revision or improvement, was kind of what we were looking at. So we looked at what we were doing on our research on site. We had projects going on. We went through them and decided which ones really had legs to go someplace commercially and why. And some of those didn't make the gate, or they were given 1 or 2 years to make the gate. And some of them disappeared after time. That freed up money to go to other areas. We had a fairly fixed financial budget at the time. We looked at the academic institutions, WVU, Pitt, Carnegie Mellon, the ones at Rita, Ohio State, Penn State, and saw where we could collaborate them to go for grants beyond what we were doing and be participants in it. And that worked quite well. It was always a constant wrestling match. I won't say it ran smoothly. Everybody wants to be the PI responsible and control the money, but we continued to work with that. We looked at what industry was doing. And one of the things I learned early on in that, even though I'd been involved in working with the industry when I was working with Rita, was that too often we were talking to the researchers, to the industry, what they think the research should be. And sometimes the people who are going to put the real money down on buying the technology don't know their researchers are going this way when they think their business line is going that way. And all of a sudden, you've funded research and participated in research for a couple of years that the company doesn't want. So now you have research that's interesting, fascinating, and nobody's going to put it on the shelf. They're just going to ignore it. So we tried to go back out and talk to people, and as a director, I would go to several institutions and go and kind of do a sanity check on what we think they wanted. At the same time, the government has its own R&D program and its own roadmap, and has to. We can't have a collusion. So it's kind of a gentle dance we have to do about what are you thinking about doing, and don't show me everything, and I'll tell you what I'm thinking about doing and why it might make sense that you. The other thing we did is some of the grants, we could see they were failing. And what I asked the people to do, that if I was aware of it, that we had an insight that might help them get past the failure and actually succeed. And so that we would provide some insights without compromising our stand back mode. That was hard to do, but it was very worthwhile, because if you think about it, if the government awards an R&D contract, they didn't do it because they want it to fail. They don't know it's going to succeed, but there's enough evidence to suggest it could be, and if it does, it makes an answer to a problem we're dealing with, both at the national level and at the commercial level. So we spent a lot of time on that, both with the researchers and with the people with the projects and the programs and the technology managers. And I don't know, all of you know that inside baseball what that means, but to try to do a little more harmony about how do we make things succeed. I don't mean by giving them a pass, but by giving an insight. Or, for example, if we are aware of another company doing similar work, we could talk to both companies to say either one is not, we don't have to tell them who's who, but would they be interested in talking to somebody who's doing something that may give them an insight, and then they have to decide whether they want to get together like two porcupines and decide how they get a new generation. So that's pretty much how we did that. And several years later, actually, this is probably not that well known, but out of all the national laboratories and all agencies, both GOCO and GOGO, NETL got the lab for the year with Department of Agriculture and won the DoD lab as the technology transfer and technology ripening laboratory for the year that year. So that bore fruit. And to do that part, we have people that were assigned working with the Technology Transfer Oversight Committee for many years. We'd never capitalized on them to help share our perspective. And we made a push on sharing perspectives and educating people to be more appreciative of what we were doing. And we had a couple years where we had a lot of R&D 100 awards that were both directly from the contract research was going on, but also from insights that our own laboratories performed with. So it's not a very easy, simple answer, but it takes a lot of time, and you'll be having to do that, and Sean and whoever else you designate to go and do these kind of conversations, which on the surface don't really bring results, but if you can weave them in with the rest of the organization, you can get insights. Thank you for letting me be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Carl. Okay, let's now talk with Brian for a minute. And one of your many accomplishments when you were a laboratory director here, Brian, one of the things that I'm excited about was the fact that NETL was authorized to have a laboratory-directed research and development program that required an act of Congress. And those of us at the other labs who have histories at the other GOCO labs may not have realized that we could not have a program until Congress specifically said you can't. That happened while Brian was the lab director. So that aligned us with other national laboratories in having the ability to levy a tax on some funds to provide us with a program of discretionary research that we could use to develop the capabilities of the laboratory so that we can be ready for the future challenges that we have. So this program is also really important for attracting and retaining top scientific and engineering talent. So could you, for us, discuss the impact of LDRD on NETL's research capabilities and also its role in fostering innovation? And did you have any particular projects that you'd like to highlight as being the most exciting during your tenure?
Well, Marianne, thank you for that question. First, I'll say it came out of jealousy, in a sense, but it also it was very strategic. LDRD, we spent a lot of time with the other 16 laboratories and understood the power of being able to take a step beyond the existing research program. And you can take steps in multiple directions. You can go back toward basic research. We're an applied lab. You can take the step, even toward commercialization. You can use it in terms of retaining top talent. And so it was something that had been on the books for NETL to try to get for many, many years. And, I certainly want to thank, then Assistant Secretary Steve Lindbergh, who, as we were developing the legislative proposal, all the way up through the Secretary, it was a realization of, yes, this is a tool that NETL is lacking. And it comes basically, going back to Rita's comments about making the decision of whether we're going to be go-go or go-co. Moving forward through, Carl's leadership and the collaboration with universities, and thank you personally, Carl, for that effort, because that's what brought me to NETL. It was 19 years ago when I was one of the faculty fellows as part of that original program, and an ORISE fellow is what brought me to the lab. And we saw how creating an innovation ecosystem, creating that the connection between the universities and being able to move beyond the boundaries of research was why there was a desire to create the LDRD program. So I just was jokingly saying it was out of jealousy, but it really was one of the necessary tools to have it both ways in terms of go-go and go-co, and really get the best of both worlds. It was one of those key pieces. I would lump that in also with the authorization that we got at NETL to have a foundation, the NETL Foundation as well, because all of these little tools, when we utilize them in the full scope of the ecosystem of NETL, the connection to industry, the connection to the universities, thinking both directions, applied and commercialization, can set up the laboratory's R&D arm for much greater success. And when we think of where the department has gone, I think this is really important to contextualize as well. In the last 3 years, the department has completely transformed its face. I sit in S3's office now, which today S3 is different than it used to be. It's really the commercialization and deployment arm of the department. NETL, as Undersecretary Richmond has mentioned, NETL has played such an important role in the expansion and modification and reorganization of the department to do amazing things in terms of this new deployment mission. And so when you then think of the entire life cycle of innovation, you can back up a few years here at NETL to the innovations in horizontal drilling and stimulation that then has resulted in literally trillions of dollars to the American economy. And the innovations cannot be understated, the NETL's role in developing those technologies. Now moving forward, some LDR projects that are coming through. Brad mentioned low temperature, room temperature ammonia synthesis. On January 3rd of 2021, when Secretary Granholm was here at the laboratory, I've never seen her more excited when she was visiting the laboratory, that I hope is probably on the tour today. Thanks, Brian. And so when she was presented with, cracking the nut on the Haber-Bosch process, her face lit up and she hit Joe Manchin, on the arm and said, "Joe, do you know what this means?" NETL's research, when you think of the fundamentals of now some LDRD projects of connecting quantum computing to CO2, you connect ammonia synthesis and the microwave synthesis with new catalysts. The opportunity to then just go out on a limb and take the high-risk leap. 20 years from now, we'll be talking about, well, this changed some fundamental part of our economy. And so that's what made it so exciting, to be able to create the types of programs like the LDRD program that can bring in our partner partner universities in part of this program, as well as then connect to the industry research, and then using all of the tools now that a GoGo offers, the tools of, as Carl was mentioning, we can start connecting within the laboratory to the cutting edge of what's going on in industry, understanding the full portfolio, which you really only have a view if you're managing 1,400 projects and $7 billion of acquisition in 1 year. That's really powerful. And so when we can tap into that, NETL going forward and really be the future of all of those innovations in carbon management and beyond, critical minerals, as Brad had mentioned. And so it's really exciting to watch.
All right, thank you. We have a few minutes. So we have a few general questions for you. So, oh geez, I don't know. Let me just throw out both of these at the same time, and hopefully that'll address some questions that maybe some people in the audience are thinking about as well. Was there a particular, Rita already talked about challenges, but was there a particular challenge that you had, and how did you overcome it? So that's one thing. And then another thing, what do you see in terms of the energy innovation impact that the lab has? Is there something that really sticks out to you? So, looks like Brian's ready to talk, but you're going to need to let these guys talk.
I am going to talk, and it's going to be very quick.
Okay.
While I was here, we had to deal with COVID. And COVID, both going home, maximum telework, while still maintaining our R&D presence, while transitioning into the work, that was hard. And I think everyone here knows and understands the impact of that. We also dealt simultaneously with tragedy in there, and then coming back and finding a new model for work. And I bring the challenge up because there's a lot of people in this room, hundreds of people in this room, who all have to be applauded for their resiliency, for their tenacity, for their adaptability, and the fact that these successes that Jerry had mentioned come on the heels of transitioning work is amazing, and it's because of all the people here at NETL. So I had to mention that. That's huge challenge. Yeah, and then on the flip side, expanding the R&D program from $1 billion a year to $7 billion a year, on the heels of that, amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. Those are huge challenges, but great successes.
Absolutely. Thanks. Carl, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I would go on from what Brian was talking about. I recognize that, but in that is a key issue that always can either amplify success or get in the way. And that is the relationship between DOE headquarters and the laboratory. That is an essential component, and the things that I did in conjunction with the DOE headquarters people, both in EE and OE and FASL, often looking and convincing them that I did have the program and their interests at heart, so that you build the trust and then you can talk about things and go do things, because we aren't completely free to just do whatever we want as far as research. Although researchers we like to do that, because there's no bad ideas, there's just only ideas that haven't been explored yet. Right. But the reality is, somebody's got to pay for it. Somebody's got to be able to defend why it's worthwhile. And we need to understand that in terms that the headquarters people can understand it and share with the bank, as in Congress. So I think that's a really key thing that gets in the way or can be an amplifying of force. And I really encourage that. And the Golden Field office and NETL worked on joint extramural research with the funding for both EE and FE. And where I think things are going, I'm not talking about the change of administrations, I'm talking about where the energy world seems to be going is the hybridization of a lot of things, because there's no silver bullet that this is the only answer. So they're building nuclear power plants, possibly on coal plant sites. They're looking at should there be a gas turbine as part of a wind farm instead of one here and one here. And then, of course, batteries and rare earths are ubiquitous through all of the industry applications. And so I really think it's important for us to work with headquarters, but it's also important to cultivate a work with us relationship there too. And that isn't easy. So, and I would say that in the next 6 months, that will be one of the hurdles that have to be dealt with in a expeditious manner if possible.
Right, right. It'll be a good challenge for us, to be sure. Thank you for that, Carl. Rita, what comments would you like to make?
I would like to acknowledge that I think NETL was one of the first research organizations, NETL and its predecessors, to understand that energy had to be commercialized by industry if you were going to meet the national needs of energy supply and climate, and learned how to work with industry in the research stage and in the demonstration stage and in the deployment stage. And I know now that it's a model that's being developed by other agencies in the government, recognizing if you really want to get something done, it has to be a broader program just than some research in the laboratory. And it means developing ways to protect intellectual property, a whole spectrum of issues that are required to get a technology commercialized.
Right, extremely important, particularly in the energy industry in the US. So we're about out of time. If there is maybe one question that anybody wanted to ask, we could take it. Shelley, does somebody have a question for our former laboratory directors? Looks like we have one.
Love having all of you on the panel this morning. It's so great to see you. Marianne, every prior director has referenced GO-GO and GO-CO,
Yes.
government-owned and contractor-operated versus government-owned and government-operated. And as you've told us, though I don't know if we'd believe it, you have nearly 40 years in the national lab system. And I'm curious.
More than 40 years in the national lab.
Work with me. And so I'm just curious, what kinds of differences have you seen in the dynamics and the behaviors between GO-COs and GO-GOs?
We don't have enough time for this answer. It's been fascinating for me, yes. I am the first, the sixth director of this laboratory and the first one who's come from the GO-CO world. So it's been really fascinating to watch some of and learn. I've had to do a lot of learning, I would say, about how it works to be a government employee compared to how it works to be an employee of an M&O contractor. So we have some advantages and we have some disadvantages. One of the big, of course, the big difference is the fact that this whole deployment arm of the laboratory that we have in terms of the external research that we enable for the Department of Energy and other, and EPA and other agencies. None of the other national laboratories do that. So their entire infrastructure is focused on their research and development arm, and ours is not. And so for me, that was a big learning to come in and learn how to manage that. And also the fact that I realized that the Department of Energy cares a heck of a lot about our external research portfolio. And they talk about it a lot, and you heard that this morning. So it's balancing those two parts of the laboratory, I think, has been a big difference for me. There's some interesting operational things that are different between a GO-CO and a GO-GO. Like the GO-COs have some discretionary funds they can use for things like events like this that we don't have the availability to. If we were at Idaho National Laboratory, my previous laboratory, and we wanted to have a celebration like this, we would not require you to buy lunch. Why not? Because the GO-COs have the ability to use their contract fees to pay for things like that. So there's some interesting little things like that as well. And I made a couple other notes about this question because I thought it was coming. So let me make sure I'm not. The interface with the Department of Energy is definitely different. So a lot of people were saying to me that, oh, you won't have to deal with a site office. That'll be so good, because the other national laboratories have site offices, and we do not. We deal directly with headquarters, and it's just different. I don't think it's, the site offices they're supposed to just sort of oversee the laboratory and assess their performance every year, and each laboratory has to produce this thing they call the PEMP, the Performance Evaluation Management Plan, which is a huge effort for the executives. and then the site office grades them. Now, I'm not aware that other than my performance review, that we've gotten a grade from FECM this year, so that's a big difference. But we do, of course, take the feedback very seriously and always seeking to improve. So I think the ability to interact closely with our DOE headquarters personnel is a nice advantage in the go-go model. I notice also the attitude of our employees of being public servants is different from what I see in the GoCo laboratories, where you're working for a company rather than directly for the government. There, I sense a real difference there in terms of the public service attitude, which I really appreciate in our employees here at NETL. So there are differences, there are similarities, and all in all, it's a great learning experience for me personally to be able to experience both of those models during my career. So I'm looking forward to the next years here at the laboratory. Thanks for the question. Okay, at this point, I believe we are ready to transition to our poster session. So we have a variety of posters around the room. We have lots of people to look at the posters, and we invite everyone to wander about and take those in. And then while you're doing it, you can practice the NETL thing. So we'll see you in a bit. Thank you.